Welcome to St. Paul's Roman Cathedral, and I want to give you a very special Happy Independence Day weekend as well. There's been some requests that we look at some of the highlights from last week's service in the park, so we're going to show some of that in this week's service. But before that, I want to offer up a wonderful Independence Day hymn, one of my favorite hymns ever, O God of All the Nations. Enjoy.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine. My country's skies, tis of thee, the sweet land of liberty, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands where my fathers died, and clover, land of the pilgrim, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song from every mountain side, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
In danger, who is exposed to the elements, who is vulnerable to wolves, in that moment, that particular sheep life matters most. Since the murder of George Floyd, we've heard the term Black Lives Matter. We've also heard people say, wait, don't all lives matter? To which the response is, all lives matter, but until Black Lives Matter, all lives don't matter. All lives matter represents the 99 sheep that are in relative safety. Black Lives Matter represents the sheep that's in danger, the one that's vulnerable, the one that needs to be looked for It's interesting, the very idea of Black Lives Matter at its core is really this Christian ethic that Jesus taught. We see it as a new concept. It's a 2,000-year-old concept that Jesus brought about, that the lives that are in danger are the ones that matter the most in that moment. Jesus in his parable has called us into this moment of history. Jesus has prepared us already in his teachings. So many millennials ago, Jesus has already taught us how to be prepared and what to do in this moment in our nation today. Jesus had already called us to seek out and align ourselves with Black lives, with those lives who are disproportionately suffering and violence, injustice, oppression, and evil. Our very baptism itself, when you take that baptism, when we say those baptismal words, whether we're baptizing a child or an adult, what we say to one another and we say to ourselves, and most importantly, we say to God in that baptism, is that we will resist all forms of evil and oppression in every form that it takes. The question is, how do we engage? How do we truly become allies to Black Lives Matter? We have to go beyond just words. We have to be part of action. We have to go beyond even protest. We have to actually help as a church and as individuals to bring about reform, to bring about action that actually eradicates systemic racism. Do you remember a certain presidential candidate named Ross Perot? He was kind of a crazy little guy, I have to admit. But he said something once that made a lot of sense. He says, you know, the activist isn't the guy staring at a river and saying, hey, this river's polluted. The activist is the person who's organizing people to clean up the river. And I'll take that one step further, that the reformer isn't the one just cleaning up the river. The reformer is the one finding out why it became polluted in the first place and making sure it doesn't become polluted again. This is what Jesus is calling us to do. He's calling us to actually be the reformer, to bring about the systemic change in the lives of Black lives and the lives of all lives. How do we do this? Well, as St. Paul's, to start with, is we work with our community. We work with one another. We work with our town. We work with our police department. Notice I said we work with them. I am not anti-police. I am not anti-law enforcement. My mother would kill me if I was. She was the first woman police chief in the United States of America. She was the first woman director of a police academy in the state of Florida. I grew up in a criminal justice household. But I know if you ask my mom today, do police need reform? She's like, oh, absolutely they need reform. So we work with our police in that process of reforming. That's one of the things we do as a community. We're a church, we have a voice, we're part of this community. We have a right and we have an obligation to help reform our community in this regard. We need to organize with community members who are making these changes as well. And I'm not going to bring you up, Ann, but I'm going to read something from Ann in a little bit, Ann Parker. And finally, we need to transform our own hearts. Whoops. We need to learn how to catch. We need to learn how to transform our own hearts. And that means naming the racism in ourselves, the stereotypes we hold and correcting them and working on them. It also means to call out and name when we hear even our closest friends make racist statements or stereotypes. To have the bravery and the courage to say, you know what, we're beyond that now. It's time to change that. We are called to leave the 99 when there are those in our community who are in danger. This is the very basic teaching of Jesus Christ. This isn't some radical left notion. This is a Christian notion. We are called to leave the 99. We are called to leave the all lives matter. We are called to embrace Black lives and to align ourselves into a better community. Some say this is 1968. No, this is 2020. It's not been a good year, but we can start to turn it around and make it a good year, and a year that matters, and a year of change. And one of those opportunities Ann Parker is bringing to us in our community, she, along with several groups, is establishing what's called Sunday in the Park. It's a justice and equity vigil, a justice and equity vigil that will begin to take place starting on July 5th and go through August 9th and maybe beyond that. And there's going to be skill building, there's going to be activities and speakers. It's going to have a prayerful intent. They've invited me to do the opening prayer on the first Sunday. So this is an opportunity for us to gather together and to bring about that change in our community right here in this very park that we are worshiping in this morning. We are called and prepared by Jesus Christ for this moment. Amen.
It was certainly great to see everybody at the park. Next week, July 12th, we will have another drive-in worship service at the Roberts. Until then, do no harm, do all the good you can, and stay in love with God. Peace.